Okay, so I'm going to be presenting on the theory on personality theories. It's George Kelly's theory. He developed it, and it's called the personal constructs theory. Really interesting. So, some background on George Kelly. He was actually born into an extremely religious family in Perth, Kansas. He was born in 1905 in April. He was an only child, and his only education was in really small rural schools or by his parents. So his early education was not that great. He does attribute part of his theory on personality development to the fact that he was an only child. He moved frequently throughout his life, and he was homeschooled and educated. He lived in impoverished and really rural areas, so that's a big factor in his theories and how he views things. So he went on, got his bachelor's degree in physics and mathematics. A lot of his theory is hypothesis-based, so you can see his background in sciences in that. He graduated from Park College, but 3 years of his undergrad, he went to Friends University, which is a small university in Kansas. He didn't actually study psychology until graduate school, but he was really fascinated by it. He attended graduate schools in Kansas, Minnesota, Edinburgh, Scotland, which is in Scotland, and Iowa. He ended up graduating from Iowa with a PhD in psychology. I'm not sure why he went to so many schools, but gave him a broad sense of people and education, which he played into later. So out of school, he was hired on at Fort Hays, Kansas State College, just as a staff member. So he started a psychology program, which is actually awesome. Oh, next slide, sorry. Yeah, he started a psychology program when he was there, and it was focused on providing children and adolescents with therapy and psychological help. This is actually still around, so it went on to grow into massive psychological services in rural areas in America. So he was really good at getting children the psychology services that they needed. So he got fired, or laid off, I guess, not fired. He was really good, but got laid off due to the Great Depression, and then served in the psychology program in the U.S. Navy during World War II because he didn't have anything else to do. But he liked his time in the Navy, so then he was hired on at Ohio State University, and he stayed there until he stopped working. So he published many works. They were all kind of regarding the personal constructs theory. 2 of these were huge. And so, yeah, he was there for 19 years, and he spent almost all of those 19 years refining the personal constructs theory. What's interesting is his accomplishments really continue after his death. So an organization was founded around his theory called the International Congresses on Personal Construct Psychology. So like this big organization in psychology is just about his theory. And so now it's considered a specialty. So if you're a psychologist, you can specialize in personal construct psychology. So he created his own specialty. Okay, that's enough background. Let's get into some theory here. So I really liked this quote. It's a bunch of questions. So it just says, who can say what nature is? Is it what now exists about us, including all the tiny hidden things that wait so patiently to be discovered? Or is it the vista of all that is destined to occur, whether tomorrow in some distant eon of time? Or is nature infinitely more varied than this, the myriad trains of events that might ensue if we were to be bold, ingenious, and irreverent as to take a hand in its management? So what's interesting is this is like a big question he proposes, but his personal construct theory doesn't really aim to answer any of those questions on life, like, oh, what is nature? What is this? What is the purpose of life? What are we doing? His theory more just is about explaining, and it's about explaining and understanding the way humans think. So it's like, forget the big picture, let's just focus on what we can understand. And so that was really cool. So some of the purposes of the personal construct theory are to study the theory of each person's personal inquiry rather than ask questions. So what I just said, This theory is actually considered a theory about theories. So it's a theory studying every individual's own theory on life. So it doesn't propose any truths or finite answers, rather elicits that everyone has their own individual truth, and it's constantly changing and molding to try and make sense of the world, and everybody's will be different, every single person's. So then another purpose is identify the different lenses or constructs to which a person examines the world. He spent a huge amount of time to studying things that could be constructs or contributed to constructs, which are called corollaries. I don't know how to say that, but. And then he just wanted to understand everybody's individualness, really. Another purpose is to observe and study the ways in which people think and how experiences can shape these ways of thinking. So this is trying to understand like how it shapes, the constructs get shaped, is the 11 corollaries which he developed. So it's the basics of how constructs are formed and then how they're altered, because he believes that they're ever changing, just like we are. Like we're always changing all the time. And so then his point was to prove that there is no truth, which is interesting because you can't really, like, you have your own truth and that can be true to you, but somebody else's can have a truth and that's true to them, just as true as your truth is to you. So he was saying that there's no truth. There's each individual's truth, but there isn't like a universal truth, which I thought was really cool. Let's move on. These are just some funny memes, and so the top one on the left is just the one guy sees 4, the other guy sees 3. Like, it's how he viewed things, like both of them are right. It's just depending on their perspective. And so the guy on the left is for sure seeing 4 because of his perspective and how he's looking at it. And then the guy on the right seeing 3. That's perfect. And then the one with the sunglasses, each of the sunglasses would represent a different construct that somebody has. And so you put on all the sunglasses, and so you're seeing the world around you through different constructs, different lenses. And so you're going to see it, like a person with red sunglasses is going to see something different colors than somebody with blue sunglasses. So it's the same way about seeing life and constructs. This one says, "Oh, you called George Kelly a potato. You must be so enigmatic." Which is funny. The next one's my favorite. This meme is like really popular in everything. So this one's college student, and so it's what my friends think I do, and it's playing sports and getting kissed by girls. What my mom thinks I do, they're doing homework. What society thinks I do, they're partying. What other students think I do is sit at a computer. What I think I do is just sit in class, and then what I actually do is just sleep. Never related to something more. But it's just like each individual's person's constructs just view you in a different way, depending on what they believe. So his views on nature are really cool. So it shaped the way he did therapy and treatment. He believed he highly believed that unraveling your own mind is key to being mentally healthy. So he was like, be self-aware, be aware of your constructs, be aware of how they're skewing your view, and then also be aware of other people's constructs. So if I have a friend that has a different opinion of me, instead of being upset that she's not seeing things through the same lens I'm seeing things through, I'm going to go, okay, well, she said this and this and this and this happened to her, and so she's going to view this way, where I might view this way. And then you're supposed to work to try and understand each other, and it would ease a lot of conflict. My computer's low battery, BRB. And we're back. His view on human nature was really cool. He didn't believe anybody was wrong or anybody was right. He just believed that everybody was different, and that was okay. And so therapy was focused on figuring out why each person's different and what they can do to see how they're different so they can change that if they need to be healthy. So I've said a lot of things about construct without really defining it. So a construct is an intellectual hypothesis we devise to interpret, explain, give meaning, or predict life events. And so these constructs are in 6th grade, you learn that the scientific method is used in every way of life. And that's true and true with this. He's saying that you have a hypothesis, which is a scientific method, and you're going to go out and you're going to test it and retest it and retest it and retest it until you find what's right. And so, you mute that. So, the cool thing about life, though, is that you're always gathering new information, and so you're always altering your conclusion. You're always retesting. So a quote that I really liked from his was, "When we place a construction of our own upon a situation and then pursue its implications to the point of expecting something to happen, we issue a little invitation to nature to intervene in our personal experience. If what we expect does happen or appears to happen, our expectation is confirmed, and we are likely to think that we must have had a pretty good slant on the trend of affairs. Else we would have lost our bet. But if we think the matter over carefully, we may begin to have doubts. Perhaps a totally different interpretation would have led to equally successful prediction, and it may besides have been more straightforward or more consistent with our conscience." And so he thinks people are kind of narrow-minded in the sense that they're like, okay, based on my past experiences, can I observe this and it fits into that? And a lot of times your vision's skewed where you're seeing things like you want to see them, and so you're just going to loop that in with them, even though they don't necessarily work together. So here are the corollaries. And so these are all different ways in which constructs can either happen or mold or change or originate. And so there's the, I'm going to go over all of these, so I won't read them off. Okay, so there's the construction corollary. So that one's basically we can anticipate and predict future events due to drawing conclusions from experiencing similar events in the past. You see this a lot with little kids. And even in your adult life, you're like, okay, at 6 o'clock, we have dinner. And so then you're going to draw a construct that at 6 o'clock you get fed. And then as you grow older, you might change to like 7 o'clock or 5 o'clock. And so that's going to change with that. So you're taking all the past things that have happened to you and predicting what's going to happen to you in the future. Individual corollary kind of makes up for the nature sense of things instead of the nurture. So it's just saying that each individual will perceive events in different ways. So if I watch a movie and you watch a movie, we're going to get totally different things out of it, and we're going to be looking at it from different angles and stuff, and so that's going to lead to different constructs. The organization corollary is that we're going to organize constructs and experiences into patterns and groups. And so if we see like similar things happening with similar events, we're going to then infer that is going to happen all the time, or if we see differences, we're going to infer other differences. Kind of cool. Humans like to be organized. The dichotomy one, so constructs, so it's just basically saying that constructs consist of plurality, which is good versus bad, safe versus harmful, etc., like polar opposites. And so basically, people kind of try to make things black and white, I've noticed. And so with this one, if you have a construct, you're going to be like, okay, murder is bad, life is good. Okay, that makes sense to me, move on. But as things get more complex, this dichotomy corollary also gets more complex because you start realizing that there's more like shades of gray in there. Well, if I accidentally murdered somebody, or if I murdered somebody who's murdered a lot of good people, then it might be more towards good. The choice corollary is that each person uses their constructs to make an anticipation of greater possibility and allow new things to alter constructs for future use. And so that's just that you're going to make a choice to allow certain events to impact you and what you think is going to happen. The range one is that a construct's only good for a finite range of events. And so like if I go to college and I like learn certain constructs, or like if I'm in a chemistry lab and I learn certain things in a chemistry lab, I can't necessarily go and apply those exact same constructs to like a cadaver lab because there's very different things. So it's the things I like learned and constructed from a chemistry lab are only going to be good for that finite range of events. The experience one is probably the most relatable. So it just is like you're constantly gaining new experiences and testing these constructs against these new experiences. And so you're going, okay, I just experienced this, so does this match up with what I already believed? If it matches up, you're like, okay, cool. And then if it doesn't, you're like, okay, well, we're going to alter this construct so it can all match. We like things to make sense in our brain. The modulation one is we may modify constructs based on new experiences. Basically just, yeah, we're going to change things as we experience new things because things change your view and you're trying to make sense of the world, so you're constantly adapting to that. Fragmentation is that construct subsystems can exist and they can contradict each other. This is kind of the failure in human nature, is that we want things to make sense. So we'll be like, okay, this makes sense to me, I'll put it here, and then this makes sense to me, I'll put it here, but then those two ideas might contradict, and that happens a lot of time. And then the commonality and the socially construct or corollary are very similar. So the commonality one is just like, okay, if I can employ my constructs on another individual and they have similar constructs, that means that we are as similar as our constructs are. So like me, I live in Utah, I am female, I am Caucasian, I have dark hair, I grew up in like a certain town. If I have somebody that has like the exact same of those 5 things as me, I'll have similar constructs to them regarding those 5 things. And then the socially one is just the extent that a person can construe the construct process of another. So if you're socially interacting with somebody and you can see how they see them, you can do that. These are just some common things that affect constructs. So it's like guilt, anxiety, fear, joy, motivation, threat, learning, success, hostility, aggression. All of those things can really impact us and how we see the world, and that's true for every psychology theory. And then this is just my conclusion. So the personal construct theory is amazing in the sense that it is malleable, adaptive, and individualized. It is a way to explain how different people think differently and view the world individually. There is nothing definite in this theory, but rather the idea that each person's views are valid and originate from past experiences and personality. There has not been a theory more diverse or fully applicable across the entire population. So that's why this theory is so strong and has generated a national board and is so studied, is because it can mold to anything. It's not, this is the way it is because of this. It's trying to understand why things are constantly changing. Those are my references. Thank you.